Namaste and welcome to part 9 of Flutter-Appwrite tutorial series. In this episode, we will learn some advanced stuff. So, we will learn how to do search query with Appwrite, as well as how to filter data and how to order data. So, this is what we will do in this episode. Let us get started. The first thing we will look into is how to search items. Let us create a new page, new file inside pages. In transactions feature, let's add search transaction.dart. In here, I will create an stateful widget. Search page. Okay, and scaffold appbar search. Let's create a route for this. So in core routes, okay, search page, and search page. All right, now that we have a route in place, let's link it in our home page. So in home.dart, in app bar, let's add another action before profile. Search icon on pressed navigator dot push named app routes dot search transaction, comma. So we have the search icon here. Now if we press, we go to search page, and in the search page, what we would like to do is, in app bar, instead of title text, we'd like to place a search field. So here, text field, controller will be query controller, which will define here text editing controller. Now let's define init state query controller is equals to text editing controller, right? Now let's set up few things. Let's set up autofocus true, decoration, input decoration, in text, search transaction, and on changed on search changed, which will define here this is what we get here. We get a query. This is where we will query our database to get the results. So now if we go back, come here, it is automatically focused. So next thing we'd like to do is, in our transaction state, let us create a search transaction function that will help us create search queries. So let's say let's make search transaction sync function. So let's copy our get transaction let's copy this. Okay, response is list document, okay, collection ID. Now here we need to provide search term. So search, here we provide query. Okay, here we define query string underscore query. Also we define transaction search results, and for query we need a setter. This will set underscore query equals query, and we will call sort transactions from here. Every time we set a query, we sort transactions, and getter for sort results. So sort results return search results. Now down here in search transaction, in search we pass in we pass in query. By default we set the query to, in init we set the query to null, empty string instead of null. Okay, now we have parsed search query, and instead of transactions here we use search results. We set the search results. Okay, instead else we don't have to return anything because this function doesn't return anything. Okay, we now have our search transaction function. So here when query is changed, what we need to do is we need to set provider of transaction state dot query equals query. Let's import. Okay, so every time our search value is changed, we set the query. This will in turn query the database and give us the results in search results, right? So we need to display the search results. To do that, here we'll do search results. Let's import transaction. Okay, we now have a list of transactions, and in body, if transactions equals null, then we display empty container for now. Otherwise we display list view builder. So item count will be transactions dot length Okay, this list style, we have a transaction. I would like to extract this widget. Extract widget, transaction list item. Okay, let me copy this to a separate file. Control X, inside widgets, transaction list item dot. Let's import material. Let's import transaction. Let's import date format. Let's import Appwrite. Okay, everything looks fine for transaction list item. And here in transaction, let's import transaction list item. and let's remove this unused imports. Now in search transaction page, here we can use transaction list item and pass in transactions index. So search result will be passed in here. Let me search for, okay, underscore type is not subtype of widget. Something is not right. Okay, sorry. Fruits. So if I search for fruits, I get the results fruits. If I go back, if search is empty, I get all the results. Let's search for Flutter. I get this. So Appwrite uses MySQL full text search to perform the searches. So limitations are there. So whatever limitations the full text search has, so I think minimum of 4 characters must be supplied for search to happen. Okay, so search is working. But one last thing that I would like to do is, what happens here is every time I make a change, it performs request. However, what I want is, I want there to be some timeout so that when the typing stops for few seconds or few milliseconds, only then to do the query. We do not want to hit the server every time each letter changes. To do that, we'll use timer. So let's set up a timer. Debounce. And in our search changed, what we would like to do is, if debounce is active, false underscore debounce dot cancel. So if it is active, cancel. Otherwise, debounce equals timer duration. So I'd like to use 800 milliseconds. You can use however timeout time you require and pass in this. So doing this, the query will happen only if the user stops typing for 800 milliseconds. So it will not happen for every change. Okay. So finally, we are able to search our list of items. Next, right now, these items in the home page are listed in random order. So July 2, July 24, 22, 25, 15, 30. So what I'd like to do is, I'd like to order these by date in the descending order so that the latest item always comes on the top. To do that, let's go to transaction state, and in get transactions functions, in get transaction function, here we'll add the order field. And for us, our order field is transaction date. So after I order this, and if I hot restart now, okay, transactions are ordered in ascending order. So to change that, order type dot descending. So if we put descending and hot restart now, it should be ordered in descending order with latest item on the top. So July 30, 25, 24, 22, 15. So this is how we can order when getting the documents. We can specify the order field. Right now Appwrite only supports one order field, but they might add support of array in the order field so that we can order the documents by multiple fields. Okay, now I'd like to do some filtering using different fields. To do that, we'll add a new feature called reports. Okay, we'll add a new feature called reports. For that, first I'll create a page. Reports.dart. Okay, and I'll set up a route. Reports page. So now we have a route, we have a page, we need to link. So in our home.dart, I'll add a bottom navigation bar. So here, bottom app bar, okay, child, container height 50, central line, and this child will be a row, main axis size dot minimum, and children will be for now icon button, receipt icon on first, push named dot reports. All right, and floating action button location, action button location dot end dot. Okay, right now in app bar, bottom app bar, we have only one icon. Later we might add features. So in reports page, first we need a function in our transaction state. We need a function that will query the transactions. So it will return a list of transactions, query transactions. So what I would like to query here is by date time from date time to. So I would like to get transactions between two dates. Here, let us copy this get transactions again. Okay, let's make this async. Let's keep the order by field. Let's put the descending order as well, and let's add filters. So filters are array of strings where we pass our filters. So what I would like to filter this documents is by transaction date, which is greater than or equal to, transaction date is greater than or equal to from dot milliseconds. So we are storing the transaction date in milliseconds. So first check transaction date is greater than or equal to from, and date is less than or equal to 2 dot milliseconds since epoch. So this will ensure that we get the transactions between from date and to date. And right now the array of filters are joined as AND. So this and these two filters are joined as AND when Appwrite does the query internally. But later they are adding support for OR and OR combinations so that we can do advanced filters. But right now this is sufficient for us, and instead of assigning we'll return. We do not need notify listeners, and we do not need else because we are returning here. We return null. Okay, so we are able to query the transactions. Now in report page, what I would like to do is I'd like the user to be able to select two dates or range of date and get the expense and income total report between those date. And for that, in pubspec.ml, I'd like to add a new package called date range picker. So in dependencies, date range picker version 1.6.1.0.6. Let us also add date utils version 0.1.0 plus 3 and get packages. Now we are ready to build our reports page. First, let us make this stateful widget and let us define some values here. Date time, start date, end date, today, total income, total expense, loading, transactions. Let us import transaction model. Now let us create init state. Today is date time dot now. Today we'll normalize date time today dot day, start day equals utils dot from first day of week today. Okay, end date always today, get transactions. So we'll make a get transactions function. Before that, we'll create two helper functions that will help normalize our date. Start of day date, this will return date time will be 0, 0, 0, and next one end of day. So end of the day, for end of the day time will be 23, 59, 59. This will help us query in the database with correct date and time. Now get transactions function here. First, if loading return. So if loading is already true, then just return set state total income 0, expense total expense 0, loading true. Okay, now what we'll do is transactions equals provider of context deletion false. Let's import. Let's also make this function async and import provider dot query transactions. In here we need to pass from will be start of day start date, and to will be end of day end date. So we'll query the database. If transactions is not equal to null, then we'll look through the transactions to calculate total income and total expense. So transactions for each, let's make this transaction inside. If transaction dot, sorry, this should be only transaction dot transaction type equals 2. If transaction type equals to total expense plus equals transaction dot amount, else if transaction type equals 1, then total income plus equals transaction dot amount. This will calculate total of expense and income. And finally set state loading false. Now we need to display these total income, total expense and our list of transactions. For that, in the body, let's use list view. Children first, we'll show the date range, date format dot y mmd dot format start date plus okay, so plus here let's give a dash hyphen plus format in date, and on crest we will select the date range using our date range picker. So date time range equal to Oh wait, let's make this async. Date range speaker dot show date picker. Let's import this date range speaker. Sorry, we need to import. So import date range speaker as date range speaker. Now we can use this to show date picker, and this will require few required parameters: context, next first date. So first date, let's use -5 years. Last date +5 years. Initial first date, start date, initial last date, in date, initial date picker mode dot day. So this will show the date range picker. If range is not equal to null, that is if user picks some range, start date equals range dot first, in date equals range dot last, and run get transactions again. So once user picks the date range, we set the dates and get the transactions. Now here, if loading, then we show circular progress indicator. If not loading, first so we use the card to show the total expense. Let me go back and come here again. Okay, so total expense is now displaying and date range is displaying. We can pick, we should be able to pick a separate date. So there are some errors here. The month, getter month was called on null. Let's check. Okay, somehow it's not. Oh, okay, on long press, not on long press, but on tap. So on tap, we should be able to pick a date range. Let's say 1 to 16. Expenses 0. Let's make it 16 to 24. Expenses 1500. Let's do the same for income. So let's duplicate this. Income. We display the total income. See, let's give some gap here. we can view income and expense. Finally, if transactions is not equal to null, then list view builder, item count, length, and return transaction list item transactions index, and this we need to set primary false, shrink wrap true. So between these date, these are the transactions between this date. So income is 2000, expense is 1500. So if we select the date July 1st to July 31, we have all the transactions. So income is 30, expense is 3500, income is 6334. So this is how we can do complex queries such as filtering data, ordering data, sorting data. So in this episode we learned all those things. Thank you everyone for watching this tutorial. See you again in the next episode.